sent my son into the wilderness. That's the part of my story that's difficult to talk about. My name is Abraham, and if you've heard Hagar's story, then you know what happened after she left my house. But you haven't heard what happened before she left. Sarah came to me and told me that Hagar and Ishmael had to go. And when I heard those words, I was deeply grieved because of my son. Ishmael was my son. For years, before Isaac was ever born, Ishmael was the son I thought would carry my name forward. I had watched him grow, and now I was facing the possibility of watching him leave. I didn't know what to do, but God spoke to me. He told me not to let what was happening with Hagar and Ishmael overwhelm me. He told me to listen to Sarah. Isaac was the son through whom the covenant line would continue. But then God said something I desperately needed to hear. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. Ishmael still had a future. God had not forgotten him. God had not canceled what he had already spoken over his life. But knowing that didn't make the next morning easy. Scripture says, I rose early. I prepared bread. I prepared water. I gave them to Hagar. And then I sent them away. There are moments in Scripture that take only a few words to read, but I can tell you, they don't always take only a few moments to live. I watched Hagar leave. I watched my son leave. And eventually, they disappeared from my sight. I couldn't follow them. I couldn't control what happened next. All I had was what God had told me. My son had a future. I had spent years learning what it meant to trust a God I could not always understand. He told me to leave my country, and I went without knowing exactly where he was taking me. He promised Sarah and me a son, when everything about our age said it was impossible. Again and again, God asked me to trust what he had spoken, before I could see how he would accomplish it. And now, I had to trust him with Ishmael. What I didn't know was that the water I gave Hagar would eventually run out. I didn't see her wandering in the wilderness of Beersheba. I wasn't there when she placed Ishmael beneath a shrub. I didn't see her walk away because she couldn't bear to watch her son die. I didn't hear Ishmael cry. But God did. God heard my son. God called to Hagar. God opened her eyes, and there was water. And the boy I watched disappear into the wilderness didn't die there. He grew. Scripture says, and God was with the lad, and he grew. God was with him. Those are words I wish every parent could hold on to when they're facing something they cannot control. I couldn't go where Ishmael was going, but God could. I couldn't see what was happening to him, but God could. I couldn't provide everything Ishmael would need for the rest of his life, but God could. Sometimes faith means following God, but sometimes faith means releasing what you love into his hands. Hagar experienced that wilderness differently than I did. She lived it. She carried the water. She heard our son crying. She saw the well. That is her story, and I would never take it away from her. But this is mine. I was the father who watched them leave, and I had to trust that the God who gave me a promise concerning my son would still be God when my son was beyond my sight. My name is Abraham. I sent my son into the wilderness, but I did not send him outside the reach of God. Ishmael left my house, but he never left God's sight. He never left God's hearing, and he never left God's promise. I had to let my son go, but God had already told me what I needed to know. Ishmael still had a future.